So as we know, it has been an absolutely rubbish week in the world of professional wrestling, but then AEW came along with their pay-per-view known as Double or Nothing and gave us something that was so ludicrous and so ridiculous, I couldn't help but have a massive smile on my face. But does that mean it was good? Or does it mean it was bad? Does it mean it gets an up? Or does it mean it gets a down? There's only one way to find out. My name is Simon Miller, and this is Ups and Downs for AEW Double or Nothing. We started with a kickoff match, and can you believe it? It was pretty good. It was Private Party taking on the Best Friends in what I'm going to call a spot fest. Pretty sure I just invented that term. It's good enough. And I'm just going to keep it simple because we got loads to talk about, but it was exactly what it should have been. The Best Friends beat Private Party after Strong Zero, and that's what you should have done because look, Trent and Chuck have been on TV during the global pandemic, whereas Private Party are only just coming back. You absolutely should build to those two having a tag team match in the future, and given that they are now the number one contenders, it makes all the sense in the world. Double or Nothing then started properly with a video thanking first responders, and I thought that was very nice because just think of the pressure they've been under over the last couple of months, and it ended with a graphic for Shad Gaspard. I also thought that was very nice. The pay-per-view then began properly, and we were going to start with the casino ladder match, and we had a bunch of promos beforehand with some of the people that were going to be in said match. And Kip Sabian won this hands down because he said ladder matches are in my DNA. Like when Mrs. Sabian popped him out and gave birth to him, the doctor went, Mrs. Sabian, congratulations, you just gave birth to a ladder. That would hurt. We then got into it properly, and AEW just used good old-fashioned logic because we did indeed start with Scorpio Sky and Frankie Kazarian. So you're like, they're going to have to put their allegiances to one side for the next little while. And I always like that. It's nice and simple. You don't have to overthink it. And even though this did get crazy towards the end, and were some proper crazy moves that people were doing, it actually didn't go as nuts as I was expecting, but I appreciated that. I'm sure there are definitely some injuries, but I didn't think anybody had died. Well, maybe Darby Allin will talk about it. Kip Sabian was out third, and he just came in there with Jimmy Havoc, who went, there's no rules, so we're just going to beat up SCU because we're a couple of ragamuffins. And then Darby Allin came in at number 4, and I just thought this was such a great example about how AEW is so diverse, which I massively appreciate. Because in at number 5 was Orange Cassidy. So you had Darby Allin come in, and he ran around and he was doing crazy dives and he was doing the mad stuff that he does. But Orange Cassidy, his first thing to do was to go up to the commentators and say, look, I don't really understand what the rules of the match are. Can you explain them to me? And then even when he was in the ring, he was so lackadaisical and so like, I can't be asked. Again, juxtaposition. Hate that word, but true. Throughout all of this too, Darby Allin did indeed climb up a ladder, and he tried to basically ollie a skateboard through the corpse of Kazarian that was lying on a table, but Kaz was too smart. He got out the way, and Darby just went crashing through that table. It looked like a bomb had gone off. And again, this was the exception to what I was saying earlier. He is just a crazy tamale. It was then Colt Cabana, Joey Janela, who was replacing Phoenix, who is injured, and Luchasaurus all taking their place in the match. But by this stage, we were all like, well, who is going to be the mystery guy? Obviously, we all hoped it was going to be Repo Man, but I'm still going to have to keep my fingers crossed for that because it wasn't Repo Man. And at first, well, it seemed like it was Taz. And the reason I say that is because Taz's voice came over the loudspeaker and said something like, here comes the cage. And I hadn't put 2 and 2 together at first because I'm a moron, I'm a bald asshole. But it turns out he is now the manager or the friend or the whatever of Brian Cage, who, yes, did indeed make his debut here for AEW. Now, I don't know whether we need to see another legend of the sport teaming up with an up-and-comer, because we've got it with Cody, and we've got it with Lance, and we've got it all over the place, but we'll wait and see. We'll let it play out. But my only criticism with this is that the commentators kind of treated this like they were just, going for a walk in the park. There was no pizzazz, there was no excitement. I do know we've seen Brian Cage before. I think he was at All In. But yeah, where was the, oh my God, it's Brian Cage, look how jacked he is. It's like, it's Brian Cage. would you like some orange juice? Realizing how massive he was, everyone then just thought, look, we got to get together and stop this man. And they did that by burying him under the Double or Nothing set, including one of those giant poker chips, which also later on, Orange Cassidy got Death Valley drivered on thanks to Joey Janela, and that must have killed Brian Cage's spine. And soon Marco Stunt was out here. He was on a step ladder, because he's small, and step ladders are smaller than normal ladders, and he was giving a double choke slam to Orange Cassidy. And yeah, look, I know there are a few rough spots in this, but it is a ladder match, and that's just what goes down. And the thing that I appreciated the most is that Brian Cage rose from this wreckage he was in like a monster from the deep. He got in the ring, he wrecked Darby Allin, and he did indeed grab the poker chip, whatever you want to call it, meaning he can cash it in for a world title shot wherever he wants. And that's what you have to do when you do indeed have a surprise competitor. Now he feels like a big deal, he's got all the momentum in the world, and if you didn't know who he was, well, just look at the guy, but you know that you should be taking him seriously. I also hope that Darby Allin isn't dead, because the way that he was taken out of this is that Brian Cage put him on a ladder, got underneath ladder and Darby Allin, and gorilla pressed it over the top rope. That is some mad strength, and I can only imagine what happened to Darby's body when he crashed into the floor. Somebody call his mother. Taz said after this right into the camera that Brian is going to continue to ruin bodies or something like that, and it was just fun. It was just enjoyable. I'll be honest, it wasn't the greatest ladder match I've ever seen, but it ticked all my boxes, and I like it when my boxes are ticked. Give it up. And it was absolutely the same when it comes to MJF versus Jungle Boy. These two are already great, but I tell you, down the line in a few years, they are gonna be superstars. They get it up. It started off very slow and methodical to remind some people that yes, these two can wrestle. They do know what they're doing. And then MJF, he just went full MJF. He pretended to be injured. He was like, oh no, I'm in so much pain, somebody help me. And when the ringside doctor came to check on him and Jungle Boy, Maxwell just punched Jungle Boy right in the face. He's such a little dick. From here, they just turned it up to 78, and it was so impressive to watch. Jungle Boy hit a poison rana from the apron onto MJF, and that terrified me, because if it had gone wrong, they both would have broken necks. And when he hit a set-out powerbomb from the second rope, I was like, oh my gosh, he's gonna do it. He can go to Tarzan and say, oh, we did it, Daddy-O. But unfortunately, MJF kicked out. The idea here too, I think, was that they were both kind of evenly matched. They didn't really know how to outdo each other, and that tied into the finish, because they kept rolling each other up, trying to use the most devastating move in all of sports entertainment. But as it turns out, Maxwell had the more devastating move in all sports entertainment, and he hit a roll-up of his own, added what they called a Euro clutch, and it looked all kind of like, oh, how did he do that? And he got the 1, 2, 3. But even after this, did he stand up and cheer? No, he rolled out the ring because he was spent, which only allows you to go, oh, Jungle Boy took him to the limit, and he kind of won by a fluke. This was really smart. So this was just a really fun match and such a good showcase for the future. You're damn right I'm blowing smoke up their ass. People always say that. I'm not trying to blow smoke up your ass. Well, I am. I've got the smoke and it's going up both these guys' asses. I then needed some information because out came Mike Tyson. So I was like, oh, cool, here we go. It's TNT title finals tournament thingamajiggy time. I can't wait. But then I looked at the belt and I was like, well, it's okay, it's all red and stuff, but it's not as nice as some of the other All Elite Wrestling belts, and that's because, as the commentators told us, oh, it's not finished yet, we're gonna add some gold. So that was bizarre, and then Mike Tyson himself was absolutely hilarious, because Lance Archer came out and he just wrecked some dude during his entrance, which has become his thing, and then when we cut to Iron Mike, his face was like a merging of confusion and bewilderment. It was so surreal, and it kind of seemed like he didn't know where he was. As for the TNT title match itself though, well, I'm just gonna level with you, I flippin' love Cody Rhodes matches. I will say they do benefit greatly from having a crowd, because we get in for the roller coaster, but overall, it is getting it up. And there was just a bunch of nut spots here as well, especially when they were fighting on the outside, and Cody was on a flight case, and Lance Archer just grabbed him and chucked him onto the concrete floor. And this was coming off the fact within the first 10 seconds, Lance had already hit the blackout on Cody, and if he hadn't rolled out the ring, much like MJF had done earlier, he probably would have lost in, like I say, around about 32 seconds. It was mostly Archer on top as well, as Cody kept trying to fight back, but he just couldn't find a way through. And then we cut to Mike Tyson in the crowd, who was yawning. And I would have loved to have heard the director and the producer on comms then. They'd be like, oh my gosh, cut away from Mike, cut away from Mike. And look, obviously Jake Roberts and Arn Anderson were going to come into play somehow. We had a whole segment dedicated to them on Dynamite, and it also tied into the finish because Jake Roberts at one point decided to distract the referee because he's just a bit of a dick. So Arn Anderson was like, okay, well, if you're going to do that, I myself am going to be a dick. He saw Lance Archer was on the top rope, so he just pushed him off. A second ref then ran down and told on Arn Anderson like the dirty snitch that he was. So not only was Arn thrown out of there, but so was Jake Roberts. However, Jake Roberts then came back with his snake because he was like, haha, this is my whole gimmick. And that's where Mike Tyson got involved because he jumped onto the rampway, he took his shirt off, he got naked because why the hell wouldn't? And Jake Roberts was terrified like, oh please, Mike Tyson, don't knock me out. So instead he just left. During all of this fracas too, obviously we still had a match in the ring, and as Lance Archer went for another blackout, Cody Rhodes was able to reverse it and hit 2 crossroads, and he got the win, but I really didn't mind who was going to win here because I think you've got great stories whatever direction you want to go in, and that now Cody has a championship belt. I bet Darby Allin beats him for him eventually, and that will send us all loopy. But I will say I felt like there was too much schmozziness in the ending here, and also it kind of goes back to what I said on AEW Dynamite Ups and Downs a long time ago. I just don't get what we're doing with the crossroads, because earlier on, not only had Lance Archer already kicked out of this, but then as said, Cody gave him 2 of them, and that was enough to put the big man down. But I've seen other people take like 62,478 crossroads, and they just get their shoulder up. I do not believe this is how you should have suffered Murder Hawk's first loss. So I am being a nerd, I know that. You can go, Miller, you bald asshole, I totally understand. But I just thought we needed something bigger here that would have made me have gone, which is the noise I make when I feel something has gone to plan. So in that sense, it's a down. But this was still great all round. I'm really, really pleased that Cody is the TNT champion. And between you and me, I think Cody, when it comes to stories in his matches, tells them better than anybody else in American wrestling. That's right, I said it, somebody had to say it. This was a little bit nuts. We had an update with Britt Baker's injury after this, and it really does sound like it sucks. We were hearing from the doctor himself, who did have a very good line when he said, look, the injury is bad, but it's certainly not as bad as the patient herself, because she is driving us all nuts with her high maintenance. However, we will get a proper update on Dynamite and really taking away kayfabe and all of that. This is the worst timing for Britt Baker. I hope she's all right, and I hope she comes back soon. This naturally led into Chris Statlander versus Penelope Ford, who was taking the dentist's place, and I just thought they were put in a really unenviable position because not only were they following an epic match, or at least what was set out to be an epic match, but 2, they didn't have a story here. So you went from all the story to no story. There was nothing they can do. It gets a down. It just never really found its flow, even though Chris Statlander and Penelope Ford are great and they're going to go far. But I will say, I did like the fact that Kip Sabian came out halfway through, and given everything that had happened in the ladder match, he looked like he'd been hit by a truck. I appreciate his dedication to the cause. Chris Statlander eventually won after the Big Bang Theory, which made sense when you thought, oh, well, I know who the AEW Women's Champion is, but maybe that's about to change. We then had an impromptu comedy match that I don't think anybody saw coming, but I will say this, when you are going to do long pay-per-views like AEW clearly want to do, you need to be able to come up with things to break up the pacing, and I actually thought this broke up the pacing very nicely. I'm giving it an up. Because it was everything to do with Shawn Spears and Dustin Rhodes, and Spears, my future tag team partner, was out here in a suit saying, look, Dustin ain't turning up, he's a relic, he's a piece of trash, referee, count him out. But then, of course, Dustin Rhodes did come out, he whooped Shawn Spears' ass. At one point, he actually literally revealed his ass, so that's something I've now seen and never be able to unseen. He hit him with the final reckoning, he got the 1, 2, 3, and he got his revenge. The only thing I will say is that I would have switched the last 2 matches around and put this after the Cody match so you could calm everybody down, but it was some nice respite, and yeah, it made me chuckle. At this point, AEW showed a graphic for Hana Kimura, as Excalibur also went on to talk about how you have to be responsible where you are online, and I thought this was the most important part of the show. Because it really needs to be something that we take to heart. So many times we kind of mourn in the loss, and then a week later we've forgotten about it, but that just can't be the way anymore. If you are on the internet, if you are on Twitter, if you are on Facebook, and you really dislike someone, or you feel like you need to say something that you know is negative, just think about what you're doing. Wrestlers are human beings too, and nothing like this should ever happen again. She was 22 years old. Just think, use your brain. Excalibur, I thought this was lovely. Right, going back to my tease earlier, we then did get Nyla Rose versus Shida for the AEW Women's Championship in a no DQ, no count out match. And I'm gonna look you dead in the eye and say this was flipping brilliant. I loved it, it exceeded my expectations. They are getting it up. And it also proves that I am an idiot when you go back to Dynamite ups and downs for a couple of days ago, because I didn't really understand the booking between Shida and Nyla Rose. Well, now I do, and why do I say that? Because Nyla Rose is no longer your champion. Shida beat her, and she now has the belt. And I just thought this was such a good scrap, with Nyla Rose throwing Shida through a table not once but twice. And I came away going, man, that Shida, she is a good wrestler, and Nyla Rose, she underrated. It was just so enjoyable. Obviously the kendo stick played a major part in this, because it's basically Nyla Rose's best friend at this point. But hopefully Nyla has learnt a very important lesson about friends. You can't have them, because they will ultimately screw you over. Because you just can't trust wood these days. You just can't trust wood. And the reason I say that is because Shida got her hands on the stick at one point. She twonked Nyla Rose over the head. She also hit a Shining Wizard, and that was enough to keep the beast down. 1, 2, 3, new champ. Shida at one point also managed to hit Nyla Rose with a Falconara off the top rope, and you could have easily have had that as the ending, and I would have bought it. In fact, I did buy it, and I did the noise I already told you about. I went, because it was just an absolutely nut spot to pull off. I tell you, if you don't plan on watching this, change your mind and go and watch it. Also, well done, Shida. There was no playing around, because after this we went straight into Brodie Lee versus Jon Moxley for the AEW World Championship, and all of a sudden it became clear as day. How did I not figure this out beforehand? The whole reason we booked this match is because Jon Moxley and Brodie Lee don't care about their health. They don't care if they can walk around when they're 60 years old. They kick the absolute hoo-ha out of each other, and it's getting it up. A proper brawl that went everywhere. I'm truly worried that Lee doesn't have a foot anymore, because they were on the steel steps at one point, and Jon Moxley backdropped him onto a table, but his leg smashed against the guardrail, and it looked so painful. I said ow and checked my own leg, and I was surprised when it wasn't bleeding. They also kept throwing each other into these like card props that were set around the place, and they got another one of these poker chips and just slammed each other over the head with it. So next year, when we do get to Double or Nothing, no more poker chips, they are dangerous. Forget all of that though, because it was nothing compared to what came next, because they were fighting on the rampway. They were like up the little stairs, and Jon Moxley got Brodie Lee into the Paradise Shift position, and then he did that move through the stage and it exploded. And while you may think, oh, that sounds kind of obvious, no, there had to be a certain amount of pressure, a certain amount of force on the gimmick spot to make it explode, which means Brodie Lee's head actually crashed into this. I was genuinely terrified. I was worried his bones were going to be shattered into 1,000 pieces, and this basically set up the ending as well, because when they were back in the ring and Brodie Lee was just pouring with blood at this point, Jon Moxley tried one paradigm shift, failed. He tried 2 paradigm shifts, failed, so then just thought, screw it, I'm gonna choke this mother out, as AEW went, well, to the ends of the earth to try and protect Brodie Lee and say, no, even though he's losing here, you've got to think he's a big deal. And he did pass out, much like WrestleMania 13, especially because he had the red mist all over his face, so the referee had to stop the match. And I will just throw in a little nugget of criticism that yes, I think AEW needs to watch their finishes a little bit, because it's happening a lot, but ultimately I thought this was a very, very well thought out finish, and it did. It protected everyone. Jon Moxley has slayed this beast. Brodie Lee is still the crazy leader of the Dark Order, and he never got pinned. Simple works. So Brodie does come across like a monster even in defeat, and I don't think you're done here. I just don't think you are, and I think having Jon Moxley still as the champion makes sense. It gets another round of applause. All of this, of course, meant that we were going to be finishing with the Stadium Stampede. And look, I get it. Some people are already moaning, saying it's so stupid, it's so dumb. I don't like it, and that's all right. You're allowed an opinion. But I think ever since wrestling fans were shut out from wrestling shows because of the global pandemic, this was the most ludicrous thing, the most redonkulous thing we've done so far. And I flippin' loved it. I think I loved it more than my mum. If she sees it's not true, Mum, I love you more than rice cakes. Of course I do. But I can't imagine having a better time. It is getting it up. I mean, it started with the Inner Circle coming out in football uniforms, because, you know, it wasn't a football stadium. And to start the match, we even had the blow of a referee's whistle. No one was taking this seriously. No one was trying to pretend this was anything other than people having fun. In fact, that's what this was. This was if somehow somebody gave you loads of money to start a wrestling promotion and said, you can do whatever you want with your buddies and I'll put it on TV. A lot of this you probably would have copied. This then triggered a massive brawl and there was trash cans in there around about 3 seconds in. And then AEW did something that I will never be able to thank them for enough. Because you remember on Dynamite when Hangman Page did that giant run? Well, he did something similar here in the sense when the Elite were introduced, he wasn't there and that raised some eyebrows. But the reason for that was because he was coming in on horseback, which he did here before chasing off Sammy Guevara, who must have been like, please no, I got hit by a golf cart a couple of weeks ago. I don't want to get hit by a horse. And this got even better too because Sammy Guevara, poor Sammy Guevara, he eventually managed to get away from the equestrian stampede, as I shall call it. He got back into the ring, he went to do a shooting star press, and he absolutely missed. Kind of love it. From here it was just move, dive, but it was so entertaining and not too dissimilar to what the Young Bucks do in most of their matches, but I just loved the creativity here. Because then we cut to Hangman Page, who was riding his horse through like the locker room area, the backstage, and he got bored of trying to find Sammy Guevara, so he got off and he just went to the pub. To double down on that, while this was going on, the Proud and the Powerful were dunking Matt Hardy into some water, and every time he came up, he kept changing gimmicks. It genuinely made me laugh. At one point, he was version 1 Matt Hardy, and it even had a Matt fact. Santana and Ortiz also set up this like table of death contraption before they slammed Kenny Omega through one of the barricades. And by this point, it was a bit like, what haven't we done yet? Because whatever we haven't done, well, we should just do that. Santana then got locked in a freezer as Matt Hardy actually said to him, this will help with your inflammation. And I'm not kidding, I laughed for about 72 years. Then we had cut to Hangman Page in the pub who was fighting with Jake Hager and smashing bottles over his head with Kenny Omega, but he no-sold this like he was Frankenstein. Like I say, in essence, we were just bouncing all over the place, seeing more dumb and dumb stuff going on. Because at one point, Jericho was staring at the Jacksonville Jaguar mascots. He didn't appreciate his tone, so he gave him the Judas effect. And look, this did go pretty long. It went around about 40 minutes, but at no point would I have called myself bored because we had instant replays, we had Hangman Page coming out and like drawing field chalk around Jericho's dead corpse. Sammy Guevara got woken up by sprinklers thinking he won the match because he's a moron. We saw like Northern Lights suplex for 100 yards all over the football field. And then Matt Hardy and Kenny Omega were back on their golf cart, once again trying to murder Sammy Guevara. And this just must have been like, well, I don't even know, he must have been terrified. And how they were going to finish this at this stage was beyond me, because like, these guys have done everything, and of course they came up with something that was truly nuts. Because Sammy Guevara and Kenny Omega were fighting in the stands, in the seats, and Kenny gave him a one-wing angel, and again, it was through a gimmick platform, but he jumped so high, and he fell so far, it was genuinely incredible, and definitely the way that you could have got a victory. My word. And look, technically you can say, yes, the Elite won here, but that's like saying, I used to have hair. It's true in essence, but nobody won, nobody lost. This was solely done to entertain fans, and I, for one, am putting my hand up and saying, thank you, AEW Dynamite. I was truly, truly entertained. I mean, even Matt Jackson did a moonsault off the goalpost, and he's got hurt ribs. I don't have any words. I'm just gonna make myself disappear. So like I say, it was just clearly done to bring some entertainment into our lives, and I say mission accomplished, and I say as a show overall, it is getting an up. Just fun from start to finish, stupid, dumb, serious. I had a jolly good time. Now don't forget to leave a comment below and let us know what you thought about AEW Double or Nothing. Like the video, share the video, subscribe to What Culture Wrestling, head over to whatculture.com, read yourself some articles, follow What Culture on Twitter, What Culture WWE, and watch more videos here on What Culture Wrestling. My name is Simon from What Culture, and the only real downlight, if that's a term, of this whole thing is afterwards, Tony Khan in the media scrum said that Fyter Fest was meant to come from the UK, but we can't do it now because of the stupid global pandemic. That ripped at my heartstrings. I would have loved that, but fingers crossed, soon.